For those of you who have a child in kindergarten, will have a child in kindergarten soon, or just plan to have children and you plan to homeschool or you're thinking about homeschool in your future, stick around because in this video, I am going to talk all about how to start homeschooling in the preschool and kindergarten stages. We all decide to homeschool for a variety of reasons. Often those reasons reflect on our views of the traditional school system, in that possibly we've heard or we've personally experienced that the public school or traditional school systems have failed us and our children in some way, or we fear that they are subpar to homeschooling, or that we just want to have our children home with us and we want to be the ones to educate them, have more time with them. There are so many reasons to homeschool, and that's not what this video is about, but it does lead us to the homeschooling mom and homeschooling parent anxieties over how do I begin homeschooling? What do I teach my preschooler and kindergartner? What curriculum should we use? Which ones do you use for each subject? How much should they know? And there's a lot of anxiety about that. I recently received several emails from viewers who are asking specifically about curriculum for kindergartners. And one person had an interesting question, which was, now that you've homeschooled your kindergartner, have you any regrets? Would you do anything differently? What would you recommend now, having gone through kindergarten? So that is what I plan to talk about in this video. Now, one thing that when I began homeschooling, we were not doing a Charlotte Mason approach to homeschooling. I did research and I did plan to do a classical approach. Now, when I began homeschooling my youngest, she was sort of exiting senior kindergarten here in Canada and beginning grade 1. So I just began her in the grade 1 curriculum that I had chosen for her in the neoclassical model of homeschooling. And so I already had an idea what my homeschooling philosophy would be, what my goals would be. And one of those things was I wanted to be able to help my children stretch beyond what traditional public school systems taught. She already was beyond it, and my idea was to stretch them beyond that, to teach them everything. Why withhold anything from them? Teach them everything that is out there, from history to science to geography to all the things, and that you needed to start this as early as possible. Now, having homeschooled, this is our 6th year of homeschooling, and by no means I don't think of myself as an expert, but having been introduced to Charlotte Mason a couple of years ago, I now realize why Charlotte Mason encourages you not to start a formal education until the age of 6, which would be an equivalent to most students beginning grade 1. Prior to that, your 3, 4, and 5-year-old child, really, I now would approach kindergarten in a different way in that light. Now, it's not that you shouldn't be teaching them anything, but it's done in a more informal way. So it doesn't mean that you're being unintentional with your preschooler and kindergartner. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You are being very intentional, and you're beginning to introduce them to structure, to schedules, to tasks, to lots of things to prepare them for the rigor of when they do finally enter formal lessons. So Charlotte Mason outlines a lot of things that you should focus on in the early years of preschool and kindergarten. And there are a form or a type of lessons in Charlotte Mason's perspective, but they are not necessarily formally purchasing any type of curriculum. Now, if you are shutting off this video because you think I'm not going to talk about curriculum at all, don't hit that stop button. I am going to recommend some kindergarten curriculum, and I do personally think it's really subjective. It depends on your child, it depends on their readiness, And it depends on your goals as well. But I also want the moms that emailed me were struggling and finding they weren't able to do everything and they weren't keeping up. And I want you to know that you can relax, enjoy the time with them while they are little, and you don't have to do formal things quite yet. But there are a lot of things that you can do for them and with them to prepare them and teach them in this time. So the first thing that Charlotte Mason talks about, and I really believe Charlotte Mason's principles, like I want you to know I'm not strictly a Charlotte Mason homeschool. I incorporate both classical, neoclassical, and Charlotte Mason. I combine those two and other things as well when I find other things that really work for us. But there are a lot of truths in Charlotte Mason's principles that I think any homeschooler can apply to their homeschool without having to change everything over and become strictly Charlotte Mason. So one of the things, number one, is habit training. When our children are little, we may just let them have sort of the free rule, not free rule, that's the wrong word, but letting them just do, entertain, play as they please. Random things where they feel like drawing, okay, draw, you want to do this, and there's not a lot of planning or schedule behind it. We want to begin developing habits in them. So first, you want to really develop, you want to get them to develop a sense of independence and autonomy by giving them tasks that they will be able to accomplish. Easy, simple chores, and helping you doing things around the home, and make these their responsibilities on a daily basis. So it's not just simply if they ask, hey, can I sweep? Today, every Monday is their sweeping day, and every Tuesday is when they're going to roll their socks and put them away in their drawer. You're going to give them daily tasks and chores to develop the habits of being part of a functioning family unit, participating, being independent, being proud of the jobs and the work that they can accomplish. And that is really important to begin introducing that routine in preschool and kindergarten. And especially, it helps them develop the skills to be able to handle entering into formal lessons in grade 1. So it really is helpful to prepare them for that. If you are just jumping into formal lessons from never doing anything at all directly into formal lessons, that is when you will experience meltdowns. And that is when you are going to feel like you want to pull out your hair and that homeschool just isn't working and you're not being able to. One mom mentioned it's taking her hours to accomplish school, where we get school done in 2 to 3 hours, even to my grade 5 student. And it's taking her 6, 7, maybe 8 hours a day. And part of that is because they haven't developed the habit of focused work and doing jobs in an orderly and timely manner and things like that. You're also developing character building. So you're developing the habit of obedience, the habit of attention, the habit of focus. And you can focus in on each one of those things. I picked up a book that I didn't use it as a curriculum, but it did give me some helpful tips and tools and habits to focus on. Because sometimes you might be, what are all those habits? Like which ones should I talk about and how should I approach them? It's a book by Simply Charlotte Mason called, I'll put it here, I can't think of the name now. Something about laying down the rails. Laying down the rails was a great resource. I at first started doing it like as a routine curriculum, adding into our weekly schedule, but I found it a bit too binding and not, there were ways to teach those things without having to follow the actual curriculum. But it is a very helpful book. It really gave some great ways and tips of teaching those habits. So I do recommend that book. I do highly recommend the book. And next, aside from habit training, you want to create daily routines, because when you begin formal lessons, you become a full-time student. And the student life is a long life. It's all the way up to the age of 17, 18 years old. And then you get a job, and then you have to be in the habit of having these routines where it's really begins important to have times, specific times of the day for different things. So I know that a lot of homeschoolers love the flexibility of homeschool and being able to just do whatever, whenever you want. But you will find when you do allow your homeschool to just be where you're led by the seat of your pants, you might not feel like you are being able to accomplish things, and then things drop off, and then you're not doing as much as you hoped you would, and then you're finding, I think it's just not as fulfilling. But you want to create habits, as you want to create order and a schedule. You want them to have a time where they have to put their toys away. You want to have specific meal times, times to sit and read books, times to do certain activities, outdoor time, nap times, bedtime. It's good to teach them to, one, it helps them in their obedience and in their ability to focus at that times when they are expecting those activities at the time that you normally do them. And children also, they really tend to be creatures of habit. When you don't do something when they're expecting you to do it, it's sort of, aren't we supposed to do this now? Isn't this normally what we normally do? And days that are different from others kind of throw everything off, and it throws them off. So creating a schedule of some kind, it doesn't have to be formal, but having somewhat of a regular pattern and consistency for them will set them up to success when they do begin their formal lessons. And it's really important in these early years to encourage play. Playtime where you possibly can have the time to do imaginative play with them, but also giving them the freedom to have just plenty of free time for imaginative play. Really the simplest of toys, or if no toys at all, where they're just creating out of boxes and toilet paper rolls or sticks and rocks from outside. Using their imagination and creating is really a way that will enhance their ability to see outside of the box when it is time for them to begin the formal lessons. And it's really important also for them to learn how to entertain themselves. I find that a lot of moms struggle. They'll tell me they struggle with playing with their kids. Their kids are always asking them to play with me, and they want to be entertained. But it's really important for children to learn how to entertain themselves, to have quiet time by themselves, outdoor time, playing time. We're obviously supervised. They should always be supervised when they're that young, but you're allowing them the freedom to entertain themselves and play in a way. Now, of course, as I said, we should also be able to show them how to imaginative play. And it's not always something we may want to do, but setting time aside to play with them, doing activities, outdoor time, it teaches them that it is also something that we enjoy, because there might be children who are resistant to those things, especially if it's different for them, but teaching them that we enjoy it and that it's important and that we will do these things along with them. Another really important aspect that a lot of times people don't realize they missed this opportunity are fine motor skills. When our children do begin school and they are expected to suddenly have to use a pair of scissors, or when they do go to public school and they're suddenly being told by the teacher, okay, you need to dress yourself, I'm not allowed to help you, and you're realizing all of a sudden that your children don't know how to button buttons, zip zippers, tie their shoes, use a pair of scissors. Well, these are skills. The fine motor skills with their hands are something that you begin as early as you can. Getting them to hold a pencil, getting them to hold a crayon, getting them to freely just draw squiggles, circles, squares, have good control. Buttoning buttons, give them the husband's shirt, a dress shirt, and get them to button up all the buttons and unbutton them. These strengthen their motor skills, and it's surprisingly, we think these are simple tasks and they'll just pick them up, but their hand muscles in the hands have not developed, and it can be a big struggle for them when they're suddenly being given a project with a pair of scissors and they're not able to do those things. So the topics that Charlotte Mason does suggest for you to approach in an informal way, one of them is art. It's certainly absolutely encouraged to do picture study with them. Now that you're not getting you to do picture study in the sense of understanding art terminologies and shadow, you're just getting them to enjoy the beauty of the art. Look at it, observe it. Maybe then, hey, can you try to draw this out, from memory? What do you remember from the scenes? What can you tell me did you see in the pictures and things like that? And you also might take them on trips to art museums and galleries just to show them the varieties and the beauty of art, to learn how to appreciate them from a young age. Charlotte Mason also encourages you, if you are a Christian, to read the Bible stories with them. You're not necessarily reading full Bible passages with them because it probably will go over their head and feel somewhat dry to them. She does recommend reading short passages of the Bible to them, but reading Bible storybooks. The one that the Alviary recommends is called, I always forget the name of it. We have one, the one that we use, I'll put the picture here too, I can't think of the name, it's a Bible storybook as well, which I really like. It's the one that Memoria Press recommends. And those are great. It tells the story, it tells all the major stories chronologically in the Bible, and it's child appropriate. In the Alviary, they don't begin reading the Bible, doing Bible study, I believe, until grade 3. So grade 1 and 2, they're still reading through the picture story Bibles. Geography is another one that she recommends teaching, but not necessarily with a curriculum. She just wants you to begin to lead them to encounter natural, geographical items in your environment. May it be a rock, sand, water, your surroundings. They recommend first teaching them about your own home. So maybe your neighborhood, your town, your city, streets, rivers, mountains. You're observing those kinds of things and telling them what they are and the difference between a stream and a river and a lake versus an ocean, things like that. These are that they want you to just encounter them in nature, on walks, maybe in books, in videos, and begin talking and discussing those things without the formal curriculum. And of course, nature study. Nature study is good for any age, where you are not necessarily doing a nature study lesson, but you will go out and observe nature. Show them something. Show them, look at all the different variations and textures and colors and shapes and sizes. Have them journal in their nature study notebook where they can sketch what they have seen, highlight the colors of, different sunset, the sky in different shades, all the shades of blues and grays, and allow them to observe all these differences that you as the guide will draw their attention to. Handicrafts are also excellent. They help with fine motor skills, and she recommends hand sewing, sewing on buttons, finger knitting, so many different things. There's so many things out there. There's not any prescribed handicraft that you need to begin with. You can just kind of go with your child's interest. The more and more exposure they have to these fine motor skills that are involved in these crafts, the better and better they get at it, and the more they will learn to love it. My daughter, I began teaching her finger knitting and knitting and later crocheting at an early age. She probably was around kindergarten, grade 1. And she has not really learned to love it until now at the age of 11, where she has been crocheting up a storm and she's creating all these little animals and creatures and things that she plans to sell at a children's market this coming spring and summer. But she's gotten really good at it. And there was a time where she just gave up on it. I'd say, don't you want to sit and crochet with me? And she was not at all interested. But all the exposure over and over again has now made her love it. And she loves to crochet. She's actually in her room crocheting right now. Charlotte Mason does recommend that you can begin learning a foreign language now as well. It would be done in an informal way. You could buy curriculum if you felt that they were ready, but you might introduce them to whatever language you choose, whether it be French or Spanish or German, another language. If you have another language in your family that is important for them, you want them to learn. Now you could begin to introduce that to them, and you could begin them on a grade 1 level curriculum and just not push them to do it. You may only do it, gradually, whether it's one day a week and just spend a little time on it. But the earlier children begin to learn a language, the better. They actually say children are the most capable of learning fluently another language up to the age of 4 years old. So the earlier the better that you introduce them to languages, the better. It doesn't mean that if you've passed that point, it's too late for them. But it's much easier the earlier you begin. Now, when it comes to reading, a lot of parents are worried. They want their child to be early readers, and they stress about, how can I teach my child to read? But the first thing that's recommended is to read to your child. Read to them widely. Read to them multiple times a day. For a variety of things like picture books, poetry, nonfiction, art, biographies, things about artists, all of these things. Read to them widely and show them that you are passionate about what you're reading. Also demonstrate that you love to read yourself, where they will see you reading books and see that it's an important thing and that it's something to be passionate about. Also, while you're reading, if they're sitting next to you, if they're interested, follow along the words with your finger so they can see where you are and they can begin to recognize the words without you having to actually formally teach them about reading. They will see as you read, they'll begin to recognize word patterns and letters. And then you can begin after, when they seem ready, when they seem interested, the time where it seems children kind of demonstrate that they're ready to learn how to read is that favorite book of yours that you have read to them over and over again, that they are now able to read because they have the entire thing memorized, and they'll take that book and they tell you it all, and they're not formally reading the words, but they think they're reading. That is when often it shows that they are ready to learn how to read. And then there are tons of reading curriculum out there. I will recommend the ones that I have used, but there are many to choose from out there. And you can definitely begin that as early as they're showing signs that they're ready. It's also encouraged to play lots of music in your home. You don't necessarily have to formally say, okay, sit down and listen to this music, like in a composer study, but have it playing in the background often. Different varieties of songs, classical, different styles, jazz, hymns, all different kinds of things to give them a wide range and appreciation of music. Another big concern that a lot of parents have is math or arithmetic. In this age, first just start with numeracy. You don't have to necessarily sit down with a workbook and say, okay, let's do these math pages. But as you are doing things, count. Count how many, whatever it is that you're cooking. Count out the string beans, count out the, slices of bread. When you go to the grocery store, count how many items you're putting in your cart. Count out coins. Then you can get them manipulatives, even simple things like coins, beans, rocks, sticks, popsicle sticks are excellent for using as counters. And you can begin to teach them just through those things without even curriculum. They don't need workbooks to learn how to count. And often pre-K and kindergarten workbooks are mostly number sets. Then when they are getting the idea of counting, you can then do number recognition. And that's when you can start to work in different curriculum. There are some great pre-K and kindergarten math books out there. Again, at the end, I'll recommend which ones that we have used, but there are many out there that would be a great place to start. So in general, I think a lot of these things that I've listed, there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, that is a full busy day if you accomplish all those things, and you really don't have to do more than that, and you really could choose to do less than that. If you are reading to them every day and just counting with them, I think you're accomplishing more than enough. But of course there are, the habit training, all those things. Those are really important skills for them to have in the kindergarten and preschool stage. But if you feel you're still saying, but I really want curriculum, I really want to start with something, I don't even know, that all sounds like way too much planning to me, I need stuff in front of me to work with. These are some great recommendations for you. I have used some of them, I haven't used all of them, but I highly recommend all of these curriculum for the preschool and kindergarten stages that will give you a formal something to go through to get your child prepared for formal lessons. And these would be considered formal lessons as well, but they are definitely lighter than a full-on grade 1 curriculum. So we used, in our kindergarten stage, for my oldest and my youngest, even though I was using Charlotte Mason at that time, for pre-K and kindergarten, we actually used The Good and the Beautiful. My youngest, the one that's now in grade 1, she was less ready for school than my oldest. My oldest had already been to the traditional public school system for JK and the first half of SK. But then we pulled her out. So she was already used to that structure. and having to sit quietly and having to sit and listen to a teacher and not being able to fidget and all those kinds of things. Whereas my daughter, my youngest daughter, had not had those times up until this point. Now, of course, I hadn't heard of habit training and creating schedules and any of those things. They weren't on my radar. But I could tell by knowing my child that she was not ready for the well-trained mind at that time. So I wanted something lighter and fun that was still going to teach her a substantial amount, something that I could really say she learned this year. And The Good and the Beautiful was wonderful for that. It was colorful, it was fun, she learned a lot. And in fact, through The Good and the Beautiful's, what did they call them? Reading booster cards and books. She learned how to read quite fluently. I would say she was reading well by the end of The Good and the Beautiful before even beginning grade 1. And that really was helpful to us. So I definitely recommend them. Now I do have a video, if you just look up Little Bits of Bliss and The Good and the Beautiful, I won't link it, but you can look that up. You'll see my thoughts on the rest of the curriculum. And in a nutshell, from grade 1 onward, I did not feel that it prepared my children as well as other curriculum would in a deeper way with a more masterful approach to certain topics. And so we chose other curriculum after that. But if you are looking for something to begin your child who is young and is still not used to the structure and rigidity of other forms of curriculum, it's a great place to start. I definitely also recommend Under the Home. I'll put a little video here of this website. You will see they have different topics for the kindergarten level. Everything is there for free, and you can just print off everything rather than having to look online at a computer screen. You can print it all off and make your own workbooks out of it. And it really is plenty of stuff there for you that covers all of the topics that we just talked about that Charlotte Mason suggests you begin for those ages. Little Wanderers is another beautiful curriculum company that has specifically stuff for the pre-K and kindergarten students. They really are so lovely. It covers Charlotte Mason's. It's more of a Charlotte Mason approach, although there's some things that might not be completely Charlotte Mason because, again, Charlotte Mason doesn't recommend curriculum for those ages. So when you say it's a Charlotte Mason curriculum for kindergarten, that doesn't really exist. But she does follow Charlotte Mason's approach, and it's beautiful, it's fun, it's colorful, and her prices are very reasonable as well for the kindergarten and pre-K stages. A Gentle Feast also has pre-K and kindergarten resources. It's not a full curriculum, but they have a reading program and a few other things like that through their curriculum, because she is also a Charlotte Mason curriculum. And so Charlotte Mason, of course, doesn't want you to do formal curriculum for the other stages. So she does provide reading and a few other resources to help you in your kindergarten journey. With Outdoors also has pre-K and kindergarten, and it really is a beautiful curriculum all the way up to, really they have mother teacher courses and resources as well. They have history and Plutarch and so many other things, but With Outdoors offers some very nice, well-rounded Charlotte Mason curriculum for your pre-K and K student with all those subjects and topics that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Another one that I really love, that she's not Charlotte Mason, she's more classical, not neoclassical, but the classical approach, is Rachel from 7 and All. That's her YouTube channel, but she has a curriculum company called Where Did You Learn That? And her kindergarten curriculum is really great. I find it's a good, if you want something a bit more classical approach or classical minded, she really has put out a great curriculum for kindergarten there. She's used these things with her own children, and so they have worked well, and she's always has some great suggestions and videos as well, and literature picks and things like that have been tried and tested and true. Now, specifically for reading, so we use the Good and the Beautiful's reading program. They have their reading booster books and book cards. There's a little coiled book I'll just put a picture of it here, and you go through it, and it really takes you through all the different types of vowel sounds, consonant sounds, digraphs, all those things, and teaching them all the sounds. And that by the end of it, they're able to sound out words quite well on their own. And then they have different Reading Booster book sets that my daughter has loved reading through as well. We've also gotten Bob books that were a great starter book sets. They have different levels as well. We bought the first 2 levels. After that, my daughter was ready to move on to chapter books or like longer, picture books. After finishing The Good and the Beautiful, we then decided I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. And I had the Well-Trained Minds Ordinary Parents Guide to Teaching Reading. It's a long name. I'll put a picture here. That book, it really goes over everything. It's got, I forget exactly how many lessons, something like 120 lessons. It goes over every single sound possible, consonant, digraph, blends, all the things that you will ever encounter in any word, and and sight words as well, and goes through it all. And by the time they finish that book, they are able to stop learning how to read. Essentially, that's what it's meant to do. I believe it's from like the earliest stages of reading up until about a grade 3 level. And then from that point on, they expect you just to be starting to read chapter books. But we have gone through that. My daughter's already passed it, but we're still kind of slowly just like, let's just go through each lesson. So we're at like 100, I forget exactly now, lessons. We do 2 or 3 lessons a week. Just, okay, let's just read 1 page a lesson and just to finish the book, mainly because I just like finishing things. Another book for your toddler's pre-K is this one here called ABC See, Hear, Do. I'll put a picture here. I actually wanted to make another video of just about this particular series, and I'll talk more about it in that video, but it is what you would teach your child before letter recognition. In this book, you are just getting them to recognize the letter and associating with a sound. So for example, the letter A says ah, and there's a picture of an ant, and they do the motions with it. So when you say ah, they're gonna go ah, a scared ant. And then a cat is k, k, k. And so they're making the C with their hands, and they're saying the sounds. And when they see those letters, they're associating it with the picture of the ant getting scared and the cat doing this. And my daughter actually learned how to read by sounding out A, ah, k, 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 b, b, and all of those things. And it was a fun way for them to do this action, the actions along with the sounds and the images. The 3 things together really help them learn to recognize letters before you actually formally said, this is the letter A, and this is the letter B, and A makes this sound, and sometimes it makes a different sound. It really helped them to do those things. So she has a few books in that series, and I will make another video about that in the near future. For math, we have done dimensions for kindergarten. I wasn't overly happy about it. It does its job. It's not written for homeschoolers per se. So when you read it, you feel as though the activities were intended for a classroom. And I just wasn't overly happy. It does its job if you are interested in starting something in Singapore math. It's the only Singapore math that has the kindergarten level. Otherwise, they all begin at grade 1. But Math UC, which is what we are doing now, has a primer, and that one begins with all of the number sense. And in Alpha, which is the next book after, they begin to learn adding and subtracting. So in the primers, and they can get through that as quickly as they can, or as quickly as you want them to, essentially. Once they get through that book, you just move on into Alpha, and they're not really grades, but then if they're ready to begin learning adding and subtracting, they can move on into that. And I really think it's a great program. I love this stepwise fashion of teaching all the math topics until mastery. And I really wouldn't recommend many of the other curriculum because they hop around in topics So if in kindergarten or grade 1, they might talk about, okay, basic adding and subtracting. Grade 2, a little more complex adding and subtracting. Grade 3, a little bit more complex, and then they're going to introduce in grade 3 multiplication and what's the word they use for that? It spirals through those topics, and then we'll sometimes have reviews and spirals back, and you're learning a new topic. Okay, let's review this old topic. And I find that doesn't bring about mastery. Whereas this approach of Matthew C, where you're just literally spending time on adding and subtracting from the earliest ideas of just what's anything plus 0, and then anything plus 1, and then anything plus 2, and then doubled, and adding on to that to full mastery. And then moving on to beta, where they're then adding and subtracting double and triple digit numbers and learning a different strategy and how to do that. And then in the next book, where they're going to start doing all multiplication, and the next book all division, and the next book all fractions, where they're really mastering those topics. And there is also review from older ideas and older topics. At the end of every 8 lessons, they have what's called a systematic review, and they're going back and reviewing stuff from previous lessons and previous years as well. So I think it's a great one. Math with Confidence. I have not used it. If I did not have Matthew C, I most likely would go with Math with Confidence. It sounds excellent, but right now I believe they only go up to grade 4 or 5. I know that they're expanding, but at the moment it didn't work for us because we were beyond that. And then my earlier daughter, I'd rather put them in something that all the levels are now available, and I don't have to worry about when the next level will come out. And Right Start Math is what the Alviary uses. It is also an excellent program. There are tons of wonderful book recommendation lists out there. One resource for you that's entirely free is Ambleside Online. Any of the books they recommend there. Often people worry, oh, my child's not going to understand some of these old classics. It's going to go over their head. But the more and more you read to them, the more they begin to understand the language and absorb what's going on. And they don't have to understand every single detail, but they will kind of begin to understand the overall storyline. And don't let that prevent you. Their lack of understanding, don't let that prevent you from reading to them great classics. The last thing I just wanted to talk about is, what should a pre-K or kindergarten schedule look like? Well, Charlotte Mason doesn't want you to spend too long doing school. Your morning occupation or the studies, you should really only spend no more than sometime between 9 and 12 o'clock, with frequent breaks in between. In fact, really don't spend more than 10 to 15 minutes at a time on any one thing. Give them breaks, come back to it, another 10 to 15 minutes, give them more breaks, 10 to 15 minutes, and switch up the activities every 10 to 15 minutes between 9 and 12 o'clock. After lunch, whether it be nap time, the afternoons are free time. You may have that maybe when you want to do some handicrafts or art or nature study, spending out time outdoors, free play, imaginative play. The rest of the day should be free for all those things. But don't think you have to follow the strict schedule in that sense. Let it work for you, and know that there isn't really that much to fit in there, that you can accomplish each of these subjects in 10 to 15 minute periods. I'll just put a couple of pictures on the screen just to show you what each, and you can screenshot it and take a look so you can keep it for yourself, what each day might look like, or what you might do in terms of subjects each day from a Monday to a Friday. Here's just another layout of another schedule with times of what you might like to follow if you like something a bit more structured and laid out for you by the clock. But that's all I have for you. I thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. And I don't say this as an expert, but these are things that I have found helpful and useful over the years. And I hope that I've answered all the emailers' questions. And I'm looking forward to our next video. Bye.